Welcome to our third video on drill press safety. In this video we are going to be talking about mounting your material safely on the drill press for your drilling operation. When mounting your material, what you want to consider is, first of all, am I mounting this in a way that's not going to move when I start drilling? That's important because if it does move when you're drilling, you run the risk of getting hit and you run the risk of breaking the bits. So the second consideration that you want to make when mounting your material in the drill press is this mounted in a way that's going to result in an accurate hole? Is it going to allow me to place the hole exactly where I want? And is it going to also allow me to do repeat drilling operations in the same exact position if I had multiple parts? So one consideration is about safety and not getting hurt, and the other consideration when mounting is this actually going to give me what I want on my project? So here we have a piece of flat bar. If we wanted to drill this flat bar, the best way to hold this would be in this vise. Now this vise has a couple different ways to hold your material. We will be going over them with the various types of material. In this case, there's an upper lip here. It's sort of a staircase, sort of a ledge here. And I'm going to use that ledge to hold my material. So I open up this vise, and always, before placing material, grab a hand broom and clean off the vise, because any small chips and chunks of material that are on there are going to interfere with your clamping, and it's also going to interfere with whether or not this mounts level. So I've cleaned that off. I'm going to place my material up on that ledge, and once I get it closed, very close to close, I'm going to push down on this and then hand tighten. And by pushing down, I'm referencing those ledges, tighten it nice and tight. And that would be a good way to drill a hole in this type of material. Now as well, this is unlikely to spin out of my control when I start doing the drilling operation because this clamp is so heavy. But I will insist that students take the extra step of crashing the vise up against this post so that that ensures that there is no chance of your material and your vise spinning when you start drilling. So I would take this and crash it out against that post. Now, when this drill bit engages the material, there is no chance of this spinning clockwise because it's already crashed against the post. So that is the way that I would drill this type of metal, is up on those ledges. Now, you need to understand that as your material that you're drilling gets narrower and narrower, for instance, this piece here on this ledge is nice and securely mounted. However, we do run the risk of wrecking this vise. This vise has a notched out hole in the center so that when we are installing narrow material, we would align our drill hole, our drill mark up with that notch so that when we blast through our material, our drill bit is actually going to end up clearing the vise and not actually colliding with the vise. You can see on this vise that there are some small nicks in this vise as a result of students misaligning their work and not considering that when they drill through that they might actually end up hitting this vise. And that's a very costly mistake, and it ruins these vices very quickly. So we have to set this drill press up on narrow stock, this vise up rather, on narrow stock in a way that's not going to cause the bit to ruin the vise. Now, in this case, we're getting quite close, because as you can see, there's not a lot of clearance on the left and right for this drill bit. If we were to be drilling with a larger bit, such as this one here, there's no way that I could drill without damaging this vise. Now, in that situation, we can do one of two things. We could cantilever, which means to hang your material off the edge of the vise. If we cantilever and then crash and drill off to the side, now we've created some clearance for ourselves so that we're not going to drill down. Now the problem that we create when we do this is this stock, instead of drilling, is going to want to bend. Okay? So this doesn't actually work very well. You'd have to be very patient in order to make that work and go really slowly. And I honestly don't think that it's a good operation. I think there's a better way to do this, and that would be to open the vise wider and to place your material in it like so. And now that gives you a lot of room from the jaws of the vise to do your drilling operation. Even a large bit like this can actually fit in there without risking hitting the vise. The only problem that you've created now is that when you start to push down on this, there's a good chance that this will slip and push your material down. There's nothing supporting it. So that's a problem. And also, you may have an accuracy problem when you just simply mount your material like that, because this may not be level. To exaggerate, I'll show you that you could technically be mounting your material on a strange angle. Now that's an exaggeration so you can see it, but that would not be an accurate hole. It would be a hole going through on a strange angle, and actually your drill bit would not want to drill. It would want to skid off of there instead of drilling. It would probably bend the bit and it would snap the bit. So the way that we resolve this problem, both the problem of this not being level and the problem of it maybe being pushed down into the vise while you try to drill, we would place a spacer underneath. A good choice for a spacer would be something that has nice hard edges, something that has parallel edges as well. Okay, nice hard crisp edges that are parallel. This would make a good spacer. I'll place that down in here, and then I will place my material on top. And as now that is not actually working. This spacer is a little bit low. Sometimes you will need to do a combination of spacers. So let's take, here's another piece that has sharp edges and parallel. I'll place that across, and I'll place my spacer on top as well. Now I'll place my material, and I'll begin tightening. Now I'm just going to tighten it just lightly so it can still move. All right. Now, if we get an end view down here, we can see what I have done. I've got a couple different spacers here, and I'm going to push down on my material now. All right. Pushing down on that material and tightening the vise allows me to make sure that those are supported underneath, so this can't actually push down anymore and can't drop, and as well it's sitting level in the vise. That would be a good setup for drilling something like this because it's both accurate and it's both stable and not going to move. Now also, we can set up this drill press and this vise here to help us drill things that are round in shape. Okay? Two different examples of round stock that can be held here. We'll start with the first one. It's a 1-inch tube. And in order to drill on this drill press has a variety of notches in it. If we take a closer look, there's what we call a V notch. They're notches in the shape of a V. These V notches are good for holding round material because what they will do is hold those round tubes level, and they will clamp them securely in 4 points so that they don't move. Now you could drill through the center. Some people will also drill cantilevered with the piece sticking out slightly. As long as you don't have a lot of movement, this would be a safe way to hold this. And I also want you to remember that you should crash the vise out against the post with all drilling operations. If you are set up and you can't crash the vise out, then we would use 2 of these C-clamps. You would reach in and you would clamp this vise down to the table, one on this end and one on another end, and that is going to stop this whole drill press from swinging around and would be an acceptable way to secure it without crashing it if your setup required that. Now when we are mounting a circular object like this to drill, we have to decide what's best. Yes, this V-notch may be able to somewhat hold this, and in fact this diameter is too big. It's not doing a good job of holding that. That seems pretty secure for drilling, but I would much rather see somebody cradle it this way. Makes a lot more sense. It's a lot more secure. Okay, and again, crash the vise out or clamp it down, and away you go. Now the last thing we're going to talk about in terms of mounting your material is irregularly shaped objects or objects that are too large to fit inside of this vise. Now here we have a piece of sheet metal and it does not have very regular edges, and trying to place it in this vise poses a couple problems. First problem is it's not really being secured properly because it has an irregular shape, and as well it gets a lot of flex. So this is not an appropriate way to hold this. And in fact, I wouldn't even use a drill press to drill the holes in here. I would use a punch. We do have a punch in the shop that can punch holes in sheet metal. That would be the preferred way to do it. However, if you absolutely have to use a drill press to drill a hole in sheet metal, my recommendation would be that you set up a piece of wood underneath. And the problem here that you've created now is that when you start to drill, this will spin and it will swing around and it will slice you. When that gets moving fast, it's like a knife and it can do some real damage to your hands. So if we're going to do this type of an operation, we are going to have to reach in with some clamps and clamp this down to the table so that it doesn't move. Now also, we have a large object. I'm going to place this board in place, and we've got a large piece of plate. Now this piece of plate is far too big to fit inside of a vise. So in order to drill this, we would also position this, and we would use at least a minimum of 2 clamps to clamp it to the table, and then we would begin our drilling operation. Please remember that even if you've clamped this to the table, if this table is loose, meaning it has not been locked into position, this table can move. So make sure not only are you clamped to the table, but that the actual lock for the table's height adjustment is locked. You should be able to give a pull on this and a tug on this and nothing moves. And then you should go along and drop a couple of these C-clamps in place to make this a secure and safe drilling operation. 2 of them minimum. So that concludes our conversation on mounting your material on the drill press. We've covered a variety of types of material, and I can't cover them all in this video. There's lots of different types of materials, and there's a requirement at times for you to do some critical thinking and to think about how you can mount, say, an odd piece of material on this thing and make sure that it's both safe and that it's going to be also accurate. If you can think about those 2 things and come up with a different way to mount on here, that would be acceptable. If you're doing anything other than what I've demonstrated, please make sure that you get me, the instructor, to check your setup before you drill.